Welcome back, people. It's the Lateral Show. This is the Lateral Show. Here's the theme song for the Lateral Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Lateral Show. Fasten your seatbelts, because here we go.
It's the Lateral Show, a sideways look at fantasy football and the best fantasy football podcast without check marks of any kind. My name is Herms on Twitter at Herms NFL, joined as always by my co-host McLateral. What is up, my dude?
What is up, people? Season's eats and greets, and we are finally through the Thanksgiving season. We are approaching the start of playoff season. It is this close. Maybe some of you have already clinched spots. Maybe some of you have already been eliminated from the playoffs, as some of us definitely have for Scott Fishbowl. And yeah, it's risk it to get the biscuit time, man. We're here. Like, this is it.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely a very, what's the word? I don't know. It fills me with a lot of anxiety, you know, this time of year, especially like
Anxiety is a good word.
Yeah, like the teams that I'm locked in, like, feels good. Just got to wait a couple weeks until the playoffs start. Then I can really dive into, you know, tinkering a little bit more with those. Leagues that I'm already out, screw it, whatever. My season ended weeks ago. But, like, those ones that you described, you know, like, you're scratching and clawing your way through it. I'm just like, oh, my God. Like, whew. I mean, it's like that in our home league right now. Like, my chances are so slim at this point. But, like, it's still, like, tangible. It's still possible. And, like, I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out. And that's why, at least for me, I wanted to give some of our viewers who maybe, you know, or in that position or just already got eliminated, some fun for the show. So way too early 2023 mock draft on the program today. Just want to tease that real quick before we go any further.
That should be fun for sure. Meanwhile, we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart because I've got a conundrum for one of my teams. So we're gonna dive into that one. Luckily, I think I have clinched in 2 of the 5 leagues I'm in. I'm just out in Scott Fishbowl, which is what it is. And then the other 2 leagues, I'm still alive. I'm 7th in one and 8th in the other. And if I win out, I can probably make the playoffs in both. You know, just some running back snafus, drafting wise in one. And then,
I feel that.
The other one, just like a little bit of bad luck, you know, worst points against in the league, and it's not even close.
Is that in our home dynasty league?
That is the dynasty league.
Yeah,
it's quite bad.
I remember. I think it was our first official year. The same thing happened to our league mate Andrew. Like, but you, I believe, are going to have an even greater total against than even he did. And I remember at the time I was thinking, there's no way that's happening again.
Yeah. So pulling it up here on Sleeper. And if we go to the league page, you'll see that I've got a very respectable 1,687.28 points scored.
Yeah.
That's actually best in our division and is 3rd best in the league. And then when you go to points against, you'll see that I have 1,824 points. The next closest in the league is 1,625. No, I'm sorry, 1,652. There's one guy who got like a little more. Like, seriously, I have nearly 200 more points scored on me than the next closest person. I'm still 5-7. I'm like scoring plenty of points. And frankly, if I hadn't done something stupid last week, I'd be in a playoff spot right now. But I'm in good shape. Luckily, I play a team I'm pretty confident I can beat. And then I got you the last week as you are in your Sam Hinkie phase of your dynasty roster. I'm feeling good about that. So
trust the process, baby. Let's go.
Fingers crossed. But let's get off our fantasy soapbox and onto our actual soapbox here for a second. And I will go first as I'm talking. And it's easier than just trying to do the back and forth.
By all means.
Last week, I talked about how you shouldn't watch the World Cup because, Qatar is a human rights atrocity, et cetera, et cetera. I'm now imploring you to stop watching the World Cup because I'm sick of hearing you all talk about shit you don't know about. I'm sorry. Like, if you don't get soccer, that's great. You don't got to talk about it on Twitter. I don't fucking care. If you can't comprehend the beauty of a 0-0 tie, which, by the way, 0-0 tie is not the most exciting, but like, oh my God, have you ever been in like a 3-3 draw where just like the concept is like you're on the edge of your seat the entire time. It is a chess move the entire time.
Thank you.
I get it. People think tantric sex sucks too, but you know what? Some people really enjoy it. I don't care. I cannot wait until this thing is over and you all shut up about a sport that you don't know about, you aren't really trying to know about. And like, that's the part that bothers me the most. Like, y'all are like watching the game. It's like, oh, I gave it a shot. It's like, did you really? Because it sounds like you started bitching at about minute 60 when it wasn't all of a sudden like a 8-9 game with constant goals. Like, but people are. Imagine if someone said to you, a football fan, they watch like an all rush heavy defensive battle and they go, well, that shit was fucking boring. I don't need to watch football. Everyone on Twitter who's like currently shitting on soccer would be like, it's just,
yeah.
Stop. Like, I saw the Niners beat the Washington football team 9-0 in the pouring rain, and it was beautiful. And if you can't accept beauty in the world like that, then there is no hope for you. And that is the end of my rant. I just go back to your football. It's okay.
I said, a couple Herms cherries on top of that beautiful Sunday. If you really want scoring that bad, just watch the German league, watch the Bundesliga. It's if that's really the brand you're going for, then fine. Trust me, that version of the sport exists.
Watch Pub League, like the fifth division type of stuff where these guys are borderline semi-pro athletes. Now, admittedly, fifth division of English football. You should watch Welcome to Wrexham, actually, if you're at all interested in that. Pretty fun, entertaining documentary. Get some of that football. But like, it's brutal. The refs aren't nearly as good, so stuff just doesn't get called the same way. Lots of bodying back and forth. And then the defenses aren't as good, but offense is a little easier to do. So you get some more high-scoring affairs. So, if you can find a way to watch that, that's what I'd recommend, because that'll definitely be a little more interesting, to say the least. Yeah.
So it's like the version of the product that you people are out there, complaining about, like looking for, exists. So just it's there. And then also, like, anytime I see people talk about this, it's the same weirdo bullshit that, like, whenever people complain about baseball. To your point, one of the appeals about baseball, and I know we're both huge baseball fans, as we both obviously know, like you said about soccer,
I'm a bigger fan of my baseball teams than I am a baseball fan, but the point is largely true.
Yeah. It's like the same thing you said about soccer is very much true about baseball for me and a lot of other people who are super into baseball. It's like, what could happen at any moment is such a thrill to what's going on that, like, it's fine if that's not you, but to say that it's an inherent flaw in the product is just like, no. I love the fact that, like, there's only been like 4 hits in this game. It's like, yeah, because the pitchers are going back and forth and it's an absolute duel right now. Like, that's
like, I saw one guy on Twitter that was like, with soccer, how do these people like play? They don't even know when the game ends. I'm just like, that's a feature, not a bug. Have you ever been winning like 1-0 and it is past the 90th minute and stoppage time, and you like think there's 4 minutes on the clock, but man, if someone goes down, they just keep rolling that time and it can go longer and longer, and you hope the ref is going to blow the whistle when you punt the ball down the field, because they're kind of supposed to when it switches plays and we've hit the minute mark, but you never quite know. And like, you should already feel your blood pumping as I talk about this. Like, this is what sport was made for. If you can't find joy in that, I'm sorry. Like, I'm truly sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I didn't play nearly as long as both of my siblings did. I don't watch nearly as much as you or my siblings do, but like, this is very much a pro soccer podcast. So definitely glad we got that. And then quickly for mine, because I don't have anything to talk about really, but I'm just going to echo some of what I said to you before we started recording. Very much a popular opinion, but Pantera slaps, dude.
Pantera
oh
slaps.
My god, dude. Like, oh, so for those of you who don't regularly interact with me, there's a great podcast that The Ringer does called 60 Songs That Explain the 90s. It's a tremendous podcast.
Big fans of The Ringer over here.
Oh yeah, like, so if you're really into just a good Ringer product and then also 90s music, check that podcast out. But like, they did an episode going over Pantera's Walk, and I just, like, I always kind of liked them, but then like the more they get through the episode and play more clips of their music, I'm just like, dude, my favorite kind of metal is, because like some people prefer, like the shreddiness, the, bombastic solos and the whatnot. But what really gets me going is just a band that finds that one riff and that's the song, and they just go with it, and it's groovy, doing the whole thing. Like, that's the key to my heart.
Why I think one of Metallica's best songs ever is "A Wolf and Man."
Dude.
Like, it's a perfect riff, like most of the song. Like, yeah, what more do you want?
Nothing better than a good riff, ladies and gentlemen. That's just it. If nothing else is taken away from this, nothing wrong with a perfectly good riff. But yeah, so that was fun. And then we get into the part of the show that people actually, come here to pay attention to.
You're still listening after that.
Thank you very much, first and foremost. Before we get into the fun new stuff that we're going to do, including going over your interesting conundrums that we get to dive into, and an unnecessarily early 2023 mock draft, we do have to review the things that we talked about last week. One of which, at least, for me, I felt aged pretty well, but I'll kind of hush about that one. But why don't you, the fastest minute in fantasy football podcasting, give us the week 12 Sunday storylines recap.
All right, here, let me check my notes, making sure we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, so last week we talked about two things. We covered week 2 quarterbacks we expect year 2 quarterbacks we expect year 3 breakouts from. Herms covered Kenny Pickett, who looked pretty good, even though he didn't manage to find the end zone in their win over the Colts on Monday night. And then I had Trevor Lawrence, who is continuing his ascendancy. He was like QB5, I think, last week. So looking pretty good. And then on my side of things, we looked at 4 receivers and how they could impact your fantasy team going forward. We only saw 2 of them in action last week, though that is basically what we were expecting. Treylon Burks was solid, but didn't find the end zone. Ditto for Marquise Brown. And we just don't have an ETA yet for Jameson Williams, but it should be this week or next. Like, it's going to happen. Hopefully you manage to get him onto your rosters. But honestly, all 3 of those guys, I think, could be potential league winners by the time all is said and done. And that's it. It was a pretty tight episode last week. And I think we got another one coming up, despite the fact that we're going to do 2 rounds of an entire mock draft.
Oh, it'll be fine, But like I said, toward the beginning, it's just like, if you're in those positions where like the year's already done for you and you don't really have a lot to look forward to, or you just don't want to focus on the anxiety of your impending matchups that could get you into the playoffs, why not have a little bit of fun? I am a man of a great deal of fun, so I figured this would be a fun activity. So, like you said, just a couple rounds. We're not going to go too crazy with it. We got it pulled up here on Sleeper. I know it says 3 rounds, but I don't know. I didn't change the settings. Okay. So
who's got first pick? You or me? I know it's got your name there, but
I'll go
if you want it.
All right, so I'll go ahead and take the first pick. And mind you, this is way too early for next year. So all of the information that we've received from like the weirdness that has happened this year, we're just applying everything that we've learned this year, just like a little bit, early. And there are some things that I think we'll definitely get out of this, including the fact that spoiler, which obviously like we don't know the outcome because we're doing this live right now, but like I have a feeling there's not going to be as many running backs. I just have that feeling. I think that's going to prove to be true, but that's a discussion that will definitely be had. And as a result of my, kind of thinking that will be the case, I'm taking Justin Jefferson.
Pick. Justin Jefferson should be the first pick next year. That is exactly who I would take.
Yeah, like, so as far as the running backs, you know what I mean? Like, obviously in historic years, like the Jonathans Taylor, the Christians McCaffrey, the, once upon a time, Ezekiel's Elliott or what have you. Those are the kind of, you're like the Le'Veon's Bell, because I like saying names this way now. That's what I'm doing. But like, I don't. The only two that I can really think of, like if I was going to pick a running back that I feel even remotely confident in, would be the aforementioned Christian McCaffrey and maybe Austin Eckler. But like, if I have the first pick next year, as things stand right now, I'm taking a wide receiver, and it's probably going to be Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I think for me, my top running back would be Christian McCaffrey fairly easily. I just worried that Eckler, he didn't have like the heaviest usage early on in his career, but we're approaching the point where the fall off should come. Like, he's 27 right now. Next year he'll be 28. Like, the fall off has to be coming at some point, especially because I don't think so prototypically built that he's like Nick Chubb at 27. I'll be a little less worried about,
for sure,
honestly. Okay, so you took Justin Jefferson. I am gonna then take. I'm gonna take Stephon Diggs.
I do not blame you at all. I mean, it makes sense, man. He's the other guy that if you're gonna take, you could make the argument for him being the first pick if you really wanted to.
So here's the thing: Stephon Diggs is more likely to fall off than Justin Jefferson. I mean, part of how we know this is like Stephon Diggs literally left, and then they like drafted Justin Jefferson to replace him. So we know there's that generational gap. If I was in dynasty leagues, I'd be much more worried about Stephon Diggs. But I expect Stephon Diggs at 30, not really having chronic injury issues, tied to Josh Allen, who should still be good, at least in the regular season when the games matter a little less. Sign me up. And I see no reason to expect this team to add an elite wide receiver. Like, this team is not going to go out and draft a Chris Olave next year. Or I guess when we look at next year's wide receivers, perhaps a Jordan Addison, something like that. Like, they already don't use Gabe Davis enough. They're not going to add another wide receiver to not use. So for that reason, I feel pretty good about it. I think the other guys who I would consider here would be Devontae Adams or Christian McCaffrey as first running back off the board. But I still had to go with who I think is just a lock to be a top 5 wide receiver again next year.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. And to be honest, there's part of me that wants to keep this trend going and go with another receiver. There's one pretty obvious candidate in my mind that could be pretty good for that. But
it's time to take McCaffrey.
Got to be honest, man, that is not where I'm going.
Interesting.
You're
taking a tight end that early.
Look, man, I've been waiting for the downfall of Travis Kelce for a while, and every time I think it's going to happen, he just reminds me why I'm such an idiot. This guy is just that good, and especially this year. We warned people kind of about this, like about how weird tight end was last year. Like, don't let that kind of scare you away. That was definitely a stance that I held, but it did not bounce back the way that I thought it would as a position group this year. So learning from my own lesson that I tried to kind of float out there was, once again, hey, Herms, stop doubting Travis Kelce, man. Because, like, he's that guy. He is that guy. And it's a little aggressive for sure to go with him number 3 here.
So on the one hand, it is. On the other hand, like, you want to draft guys at this point where you're hoping to get like 20 points a game from.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Kelce's getting 21.7 PPR points a game. Like, it's not. I think it's only crazy because we're expecting it to just continue if we take him this high. And I think the odds are in favor that it should decline literally at any moment.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know that I want to be the one holding that bag is kind of my thing. Like, for me, I would just try and take, like, Pat Freiermuth way later or try and stack out Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts, which I think is, like, a great stack. I'm, like, not the biggest stacking guy. Or, like, honestly, and I think they might keep him around. I'm not the biggest TJ Hawkinson fan. I'd stack Kirk Cousins, TJ Hawkinson, and Justin Jefferson. Like, I would, you know. So I think it's more for me. There's some other guys I want to take. Like, I want Christian McCaffrey here, I think. Him in that Shanahan offense, the fact that he'll still definitely get usage, like, will it be yet less usage than he had seen at Carolina? Yes. But he's just so good at everything he does. And so for me, I know he'll be tied to a good offense, a good offensively minded coach. And I think he's still got probably another year or two left in the tank. So he is the first running back I would take off the board.
Is it just me or is it not responding?
It's definitely not taking him.
I've done this 3 times now.
maybe give the page a yield refresh, or will that break it?
We'll go ahead and see how that's going to work out real quick. But, like, yeah, dude, you know, it's like also very thrilling visual content for sure. Now you get to
there it is.
Okay, all right, good.
When in doubt, have you tried turning it off and on again?
Yeah, no, I mean, McCaffrey makes a ton of sense there. He definitely would have. I mean, he would have made sense if I had taken him there at 3. So, I mean, for just the obvious reasons that he deserves to go, everything you said makes sense, and I don't really have anything to add to that. So, I'm gonna go ahead and break the seal because you already did it and went with a running back. I too am going to go with a running back, and I'm going to say Austin Eckler just because, you know, like, for the reasons.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, the same reasons we described before. It's just like these are running backs that, you know, like, they're young enough. They've continued to do well enough. They both catch passes, and they're good. So, you know, like, no offense to Jonathan Taylor, who's definitely looked better with Jeff Saturday, you know, as the head coach retooling the system to actually get him the ball. But we still don't know who's going to be their long-term answer there.
I mean, they literally have to interview at least a minority who I'm sure will be more qualified than Jeff Saturday.
Yeah.
So I'm not betting on it being Jeff Saturday, even though deep down we all know it's going to be Jeff Saturday.
It's probably going to be Jeff Saturday, you know.
Which doesn't inspire confidence in me.
Yeah. So it's like, for those reasons, you know, like, you know, nothing against Jonathan Taylor. It's a weird circumstance. And then, you know, like, Derrick Henry, old. Dalvin Cook. I mean,
honestly, you want to know,
you could justify
crazy? I'm at this point, I'm not even thinking Jonathan Taylor or Dalvin Cook. There is still 2 running backs for sure that I would take ahead of them. But
are you going to take one of them here?
I'm absolutely not. I'm taking a wide receiver.
Okay.
I'm taking Davante Adams.
Over Jamar Chase?
Jamar Chase is not a target hog in the way that Davante Adams is a target hog.
Fair enough.
That's all it comes down to. As long as T. Higgins is still on that Cincinnati team, I'm just going to probably cap Jamar Chase at wide receiver 5. He has the talent to be wide receiver 1. There's, like, no denying that. But, like, he's got another, like, top 12 guy on his team. And it's so rare that you have 2 top 12 guys on a team that it's like the idea that you're going to think, like, you're going to have the top 3 guy and then another top 12 guy is like, you're playing with fate a little there.
I understand that, you know, like, because the reason I kind of asked that question specifically is because when we were talking about, there's definitely another receiver here that could be interesting a few picks ago, I was referring to Jamar Chase. You were referring to Davante Adams. I don't think either is a bad answer, but the case that you built makes 1,000% sense to me. And, you know, as you know, in, like, our home league, I mean, I rostered Davante Adams for a very long time. Love the guy to death. Love the player. Fabulous talent. And you're right. You know, he takes a lot of attention in that offense and gets a lot of looks his way. So, you know, can't go wrong there at all. And then before I make this pick, just quickly, because I just am thinking about it out loud, like, I'm not taking this guy, but with where this Rams offense is starting to fall off, when do you think Cooper Kupp is going to be taken by one of us? Because I can tell you it's not happening here. I don't think he's going to be your next pick either. But, like,
probably not.
So, like, just kind of prediction time. When do
He'll
you think
he'll go by the tail end of the first round for sure?
Probably.
I think in no small part due to the fact that like I'm just not dying to reach for one of these running backs.
I feel that, and to that point, I'm going to go ahead and just pick the guy that we just got finished, contrasting against Devontae Adams because, Jamar Chase at this point feels like a pretty good pick. Talented guy, big fan, except for the fact that he's on the Bengals, and I hate the Bengals. But what are you going to do? I'm a Steelers fan. But this is where I think running backs could start to pick up steam a little bit. So, I'm going to be watching that. I'm definitely going to be curious about the Kupp thing, but
Well, neither one of them is happening right here.
Okay.
Because I'm taking Jalen Waddle.
Yo, let's go. Come on, dude. Look, before you even say anything, I just got to say, I love Jalen Waddle.
I love Jalen Waddle. I think he fits that offense really well. I think Tyreek's got to slow down and the transition has to begin at some point. And so I was really debating between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And I'm just betting on Jalen Waddle becoming more integral, not less integral in that offense.
I was a little early on that in thinking that it was going to take place this year. So I can take the L on that for sure. But
I was telling you at the beginning of the year too. I was like, look, I get it. Jalen Waddle's great, but if you look at Tyreek Hill, in every metric, he's top 10.
And then I was also, I focused too much on what I still believe is, or I guess was, like the cherry-picked stat about Tua's deep completions or whatever.
Yeah,
yeah. I still think that was a weird rhetorical argument for people to make, but Tua did prove that he's better at that than...
He definitely took a step forward this year.
Yeah, so, but, look, in these types of situations, it paid dividends in certain dynasty leagues of mine where, I have like a couple shares of Waddle because I felt confident enough that he was going to take that leap. So, a good choice here for a redraft mock as well. Definitely can get down with that vibe. And then, Lordy, I hate everything. If I knew Saquon Barkley was coming back to New York, I would weirdly feel good about him and taking him here. But jeez, I'm going to go Dalvin Cook just because, I'm not particularly enthusiastic about some of these other options for reasons that we have described. And he at least remains in a situation that, we're not fearful of anything changing that will ruin it for him. So.
Well, it's funny that you almost took Saquon Barkley because that's who I'm taking here.
There you go. All right.
I mean, he looks back. He looks healthy. I think the Giants might be inclined to keep him at this point. I think Brian Daboll strikes me as a guy who wants to keep guys around who fit his system, and Saquon is fitting that system. And if they're going to give Daniel Jones another year, which they very well might, it doesn't make sense to not give Saquon a little more time as well. And then even if he goes somewhere else, I just think he is one of the more talented backs in the league. And he gets the edge over Nick Chubb for me just because Nick Chubb doesn't catch passes.
I feel that. I mean, we're definitely seeing a bit more of a trend toward running backs who are just good at straight up running the ball to some degree, but the logic is still very much sound.
Well, so to put it in perspective, and obviously we wouldn't discuss this in a real draft because you may take one of my picks because of it. I would have both Saquon Barkley and Nick Chubb ahead of Dalvin Cook.
I get that. I definitely get the case for that for sure. Yeah, this makes this tough. You know what? Screw it. I'm not super enthusiastic about it, but at the same time, Jonathan Taylor is still Jonathan Taylor is still Jonathan Taylor. So there you go. I'm just gonna do that now because.
So it's funny you say that because I think I'm about to do the same thing with Cooper Kupp.
Fair. It sucks that the whole thing there is weird, but when a player is good, a player's good.
I might bump him down a little in half PPR leagues, but for PPR, he's still going to be so clearly the top target in that offense that I want it. We know he's good, just already in a vacuum. There's a decent chance that Matthew Stafford will still be there and still be at least decent, and definitely still want to pass the ball to Cooper Kupp. So, like,
oh yeah,
I think at a certain point, like the fall has to stop. Having him at wide receiver 6 feels about right.
there you go. So to recap our first round in this unnecessarily early 2023 mock draft, with the first pick, we get Justin Jefferson, Minnesota Vikings. Number 2, Stephon Diggs, wide receiver, Buffalo Bills. Number 3, Travis Kelce, Kansas City Chiefs. Then a pair of running backs at 4 and 5, Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers and Austin Eckler of the Chargers. Then we get ourselves a fun little run of wide receivers again with Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, and Jalen Waddle. Then, another run of running backs. Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley of the Giants, and Jonathan Taylor. And to round it out, you selected Cooper Kupp. That is our top 12 in this unnecessarily early exercise that I have deemed necessary. So
since it's a snake draft, I get to go, right?
Yeah, we'll flip the order. No, seriously, go for it. Honestly, yeah.
Give me Nick Chubb.
There you go. There you go.
Because I don't know that Kareem Hunt's going to be back. So give me Nick Chubb.
Look, man, what reason do they honestly have?
There would be they would have to offer him a stupid amount of money.
Which I don't really think they would, especially because
it would make no sense for them to do it.
Yeah, because the dynasty heads out there, and there's a reason that players like Jerome Ford and Dearness Johnson are still stashed on your rosters, right? It makes sense. Kareem Hunt was definitely always just an irritating obstacle for a short period of time, and then it would eventually fade away. Nick Chubb, fabulous choice here. It's going to be interesting to see what the Browns offense looks with Deshaun Watson under center, but we're not going to know. But either way, regardless of who's playing, hell, Nick Chubb was really good with Jacoby Brissett. So, whatever. That's going to be a fun thing.
He's genuinely the second best runner in the league?
Probably. If not the best, yeah.
It's him or Derrick Henry. I think if you put Saquon into that argument, I'm not going to think you're a crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly stands to reason. I'm definitely here for the vibe. Okay. All right. So, tell you what. I'm going to assume health. Okay. I'm going to assume that at some point this offseason, this team figures out how to get their shit together.
I'm less okay with that.
At least
give you the health.
At least to the point that Javonte Williams probably going to be a pretty decent move. I feel okay about that. It may be a little aggressive. There are definitely some other players that could warrant going ahead of him. It's a bit aggressive for sure, but I just kind of wanted to bring his name up because for obvious reasons, we haven't talked about him at all lately because he's out. He's not playing. He's not doing anything. But for as bad as Denver's been, and for as weirdly inefficient as that entire offense has been, but particularly with rushing, Javonte Williams is talented enough to overcome that to some degree and be pretty good as a second-round contributor to your team. I do not believe he should be a first-round pick.
So I get all that. You make a lot of good points. There's still too many wide receivers that I'd rather have over him, including CeeDee Lamb, who has quietly been the wide receiver 7 through 12 weeks.
Put it on the board. There it is.
No one is talking about CeeDee Lamb at all. This is a guy who we all were projecting as top 7, top 8, certainly top 10. And at the beginning of the season with Dak Prescott out, we kind of look stupid. And now here we are in week 12 and he's wide receiver 7 because he's the only wide receiver we're targeting consistently for Dak Prescott. He's leaps and bounds ahead of Michael Gallup, literally, because when Michael Gallup tries to leap and bound, he injures himself.
Pretty much.
There were a couple other guys I was thinking about, but for me, just the target hog nature of CeeDee Lamb, that potential, I want it.
I have been clowned on the timeline in the past for how high I value CeeDee Lamb in Dynasty, and to all those people in the past, suck it, because this guy is super good, and we're starting to see why I felt the way I did about him. And then I'm gonna stick with a theme here, just taking injured or young running backs that I think are really good. Had to pull him up there, but Breece Hall, ladies and gentlemen. Holy cow. Look, Zach Wilson is not going to be the quarterback of this team ever again.
That's entirely possible. It certainly looks that way.
Yeah. And like with that assumption probably coming true and how good they've been otherwise. And like, Robert Saleh bringing in, Mike LaFleur to run a very similar offense to the type of thing that they, kind of did over in San Francisco for a little bit. It's so advantageous of a system. It's so, and hopefully, Zach Wilson's first round draft mate from that year, Elijah Vera Tucker, comes back healthy next year. Hopefully Mekhi Becton can also have some, better health. But even without some of those key guys on the O-line, they've been a pretty good rushing attack. So like Breece Hall, honestly, there's part of me right now, I feel dumb for taking Javonte over Breece Hall. I should have probably taken Breece Hall sooner than I did.
If Breece Hall has a good camp, I would take Breece Hall over Javonte Williams. When healthy, I think he is more likely to be the better fantasy running back.
With you there 100%. Absolutely. So, where you got yourself going for this next pick?
Going with another wide receiver that I would have taken instead of a running back here, and that is A.J. Brown.
Dude.
I love that Eagles stack.
Yeah.
Just the potential there. A.J. Brown just killing it again. And like the points per games maybe like a little lower than it has been in years past, which is why I've got him like a little further down. But the talent is still there. It's a good team. It's a good offense. Like, I want a piece, and I feel pretty comfortable taking him here.
I love A.J. Brown, man. He's so good.
Very good.
He's so good. No more insight from me. That's it. I love the guy. Oh, man. Oh, gosh. You know what, man? I'll take Derrick Henry at this point. Why not? I don't. It's fine at this point.
So next year, the fall off's got to happen, right?
I mean, maybe, but we're also talking. This is another example of a player, kind of like with Travis Kelce. Like
it's getting ridiculous at this point. He is 28 going on 29. He is the third best running back in fantasy, and he does it almost all on the ground.
Yeah, what I'm learning as part of my process and evolving as an analyst is sometimes, even if it doesn't make any goddamn sense, just go with it until it doesn't happen, as long as you're not taking that big of a risk. At this point, not that big of a risk.
Not that big of a risk. I definitely get it.
Derrick Henry it is for me. Are you going to go a little riskier with this one? Or are you going to, stick a little bit more in conservative zone?
So I'm going to pick one of my favorite players since he was a rookie. I'm going to pick someone that I have advocated for a long time. And I would say in the redraft community, probably longer than most. I'm going to pick the guy that I coined hashtag Ramondre Stevens season. And I am taking him here.
Bro. Explain.
I think he's going to be the clear lead back in New England. He's already doing it with some competition and producing incredible production on his touches. He is talented. He is young. If I want a running back, I want a young running back. Like, frankly, Saquon is about, and Christian McCaffrey about as old as I'll go. Like, I like Austin Eckler. I probably won't have Austin Eckler. I just want guys who are younger. I do. And so it was honestly between him and Kenneth Walker, and I think Ramondre Stevenson may actually be a slightly better runner, so I went with him.
And one key part of this pick here, guess who's probably not going to be on the New England Patriots next year? Dameon Harris.
Exactly.
Huge thorn out of the side there for sure. We know Belichick with his running backs likes to stockpile, do whatever, a bunch of weird shit. But when you have a guy as good as Ramondre Stevenson, we've both been on record huge fans of that guy. Like, dude, love him to death. Perfect fit, because I remember my comp, and like a lot of people made this comp too, but just reminded me so much of like the prime LeGarrette Blount vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It's flawless. Big fan of that right there. Definitely bold, but I get it. Definitely bold, but I get it. This one, I'm going Homer. I'm going completely Homer with it. I am assuming that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to fix the offensive line. Omar Khan.
Well, you sure hope so.
Yeah, But early on in his tenure as GM, Omar Khan has shown pretty savvy guy. Seems to know what he's doing. And whether it's with our first round pick or that gracefully aging Bears second round pick that we acquired for Chase Claypool, we got the draft capital. We also have a lot of financial resources to go out and fix that. And also, mind you, last few games, I think it's the fourth consecutive game in a row that the Steelers rushing offense had gotten over 100 yards, as a team on the ground, which prior to week 7, they had only done, I think, twice. It was a huge, red flag for this offense earlier this year, but it's starting to come together a little bit better. I see a brighter path for Najee Harris for sure, and just the team at large. So he'll still be young enough. I think it's a good move.
Okay, I like it. All right. I think for my next pick, I am going to take Kenneth Walker. There's a lot of wide receivers that I think actually have the potential to score more points than him. But I think that my running back tier cutoff is going to be right around here. And so I'm just going to take him to make sure that I've got him. That's honestly where my head's at.
I feel you. Now, as I struggle to...
You can do it. I believe in you.
Yeah. So, when that happened, the difficult thing is that, so I left, and then I was reopen that draft room again. It opened a different tab. Uh-oh. So now I have to, whole thing, very annoying. We're back. There it is. Okay. The board is there now.
We're back.
So, thankfully nothing got erased, but oh boy, that was fun for the people watching the video. You're in for real treat. I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to just kind of make just a further highlighted point on the tight end thing. Mark Andrews makes sense here. He does. He's one of the very few. He may be the only other guy that warrants going aggressively early, at least in redraft leagues, because the whole Kyle Pitts thing, just we're wait and see. I think we've all kind of learned the lesson of playing redraft as if it were dynasty, and no offense to Kittle, but it's just it's your favorite team. So many good weapons, man.
Kittle. The other thing is Kittle's a genuinely good blocking tight end, so they like to use him that way.
Exactly.
He throws his body around, he gets injured, he does these things, and it makes him less valuable for fantasy. So I definitely get that. I don't know that I want to take an early tight end. I just maybe if Kelsey was 2 years younger, I'd say I'll take Kelsey. But I feel like I'd rather just get someone later, try and stack it with a quarterback I like maybe. Because I think here I'm going to take a wide receiver.
Vibes.
And it's really tough. So I'm debating between a couple of guys.
All right.
I'm debating between Tyreek Hill, who I still think will be very good, is currently very good.
Yeah.
I'm debating between him, and I'm debating between T. Higgins. Again, very similar situation where second talented wide receiver on a very good offense, should be very good.
It's tough, dude.
Between Chris Olave, who I think is beginning his ascendancy this year. He has looked very good. It's probably been the best rookie wide receiver.
There's a debate to be had about that for sure, but he's probably
But who would be the other one?
I was writing it up as part of a post-game column that I did for the Monday night game, and since week 4, when Pickett took over, Pickens ranks very high among the rookie receivers, but a lot of what he has done in that stretch has been in 7 games versus 8. So once we get that kind of even amount of games, I'd be interested to see where his numbers are from that point on. But the argument for Olave exists.
4, Olave's got 14.1 points per game in PPR, and Pickens has 12.2.
Yeah. So, I get it. But,
but ultimately, it's I feel like that's still too much of a reach. So the other guy I'm genuinely thinking about is Hollywood Brown. And I want to talk about this because the complicated thing with Hollywood Brown is I don't know that Cliff Kingsbury will be back. There's honestly a chance Kyler Murray's not back. I don't know how far they blow up that team. And so if those two things change, I think Marquise Brown, his fantasy value is less just because the usage for him is totally, the scheme for him could totally change. I do like him much more than I think I like DeAndre Hopkins for next year.
Yeah.
But as I talk this through, I think I'm going to have to go with Tyreek Hill. He's the most proven option. He'll still be young enough that he should be able to handle the rigors of a full season. It's an offense that we expect stability from. And I just, you got to take, I think, the sure thing at that point.
I get that, and look, hey, we talked about them earlier, how good that Dolphins team has been. Definitely, a little older to your point, but still really good. So that's.
I think in 2 years, I'll be much less likely to make that pick.
Yeah.
But this next year, I still expect him to be in contention to be a top 12 wide receiver.
Absolutely, 100%. And, to your point about, making sure you go with something very safe here, with my last pick, I'm taking JaMychal Hasty of the no. Although shout out to JaMychal Hasty.
Be of the Jacksonville Jaguars next year. I mean, that he hasn't done everything that's been asked of him. It's just, it's a rough business.
Yeah, it's a fair point to make, but just wanted to find a way to work him into the show. I'm very proud of him. I'm going a little kind of off the wall here with my final pick of this mock with Josh Jacobs, dude. Even if he leaves, he's younger than people realize or remember sometimes. And I think as a collective hive mind of fantasy people, we all just slept on because, it's just Josh McDaniels is coming over from the Patriots and look at all these running backs that they acquired. And of course they're going to go with some sort of weird committee thing and then promptly just gave Jacobs monster workloads, and he's been tremendous basically the entire time. So I'm not going to, again, it's one of those things I'm learning. It's I'm not going to argue with something that's just working.
I will say people are welcome to pull up the receipts if I'm wrong on this. I'm pretty sure that I said I think they're going to run him.
Well, there you go.
Because he's not getting his contract renewed. It's the thing. They're not going to bring him back. They're just going to run him. And I just I wasn't sold on anyone around him. I think that's proven to be the case. Zamir White was a 4th round pick for a reason.
Yeah.
I get why people had the thoughts.
Yeah. And whether he stays or goes, that dude, he's going to be good.
Yeah. So I think I would have probably taken T. Higgins ahead of him, and then he would have been in consideration for that 3-1 spot. So you're not far off by any means. I think I just would have preferred the sure thing of a elite wide receiver on an elite offense that has a rapport with his quarterback. Nobody's going anywhere. I think I'd take that over Josh Jacobs potentially going into a new situation, which you feel like he almost certainly will, because even if they offer him a lot of money, I don't know that he wants to be there.
Yeah. I dig that. I dig the vibe.
This was a fun draft.
Yeah. Quick rundown to the second round, just because I did it for the first. We started with Nick Chubb at the 201, then Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos, CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, Dallas Cowboys, then Breece Hall, A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, Ramondre Stevenson at the 207. Don't hate it. Definitely don't. Najee Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers, 208. Kenneth Walker, 209. Mark Andrews, Tyreek Hill, and then we closed it out with Josh Jacobs of the who knows where he plays in 2023. So that was a good time. That was a good time.
I can dig it.
Right.
Moving on.
Yes, you got some conundrums.
Yes. So Dameon Pierce versus Donta Foreman rest of season. I don't know how to judge this. So since week seven, when Foreman took over the Carolina backfield, Foreman's actually been the better running back. He's been running back 13 in PPR. Pierce has been running back 23 over that same period. Foreman's had 14.2 points per game. Pierce has had 10.7. Foreman's got some good matchups coming up. He's got at Seattle week 14, Pittsburgh in week 15, and Detroit in week 16 are middle of the pack. And then even potentially week 17, Tampa's not considered like a great matchup, but he was RB17 in PPR scoring when he played against them in week 7.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to see. And then Pierce has some good matchups. He gets Cleveland this week. He's got KC in week 15 and Jacksonville in week 17. They could be okay, especially since in week 17, he gets the Jags, who he was RB11 against in week 5. So the evidence kind of suggests to me that Donta Foreman is better. Than the evidence honestly really suggests to me that both of these guys might be matchup dependent. And so I kind of want to discuss if that is the case.
And I'm glad that you bring it up because, like, obviously it is an issue very specific to your team in terms of just these two, but it's also a wonderful, I don't know if allegory is the right word, but like, how do we handle these like volume-based guys as we get closer to the playoffs? Because these aren't the only two players like this that exist. And fantasy managers are, especially like, you know, with how many injuries there are every single year, even this year, and some top guys maybe not performing, like these are lineup decisions everyone's going to have to make. So like looking through these types of situations is a very important thing to do. And like, I think at least as far as how I'm approaching this one specifically is kind of just the same way that I would approach the whole thing in general is like, I don't completely throw out everything that happened before because that's kind of dumb, but I think about it just really from the perspective of like, okay, my season, when I'm looking at these guys, it starts now. They're about kind of the same.
Yeah.
So from now on, like that's the window. And like I mentioned this just because like I'm sure people are going to be like, well, you know, remember what they were doing before and like all the, you know, it's like, but that guy and then that guy. It's like, no. If you're worried about making the playoffs and making a run in the playoffs, there's part of your brain that has to throw some of that information away because that honestly will be a greater detriment to whatever decision you ultimately make, probably more so than anything else. So like, that's at least where I would start that conversation is just reminding people like past is the past. You're playing from here now, like out like that's what you're looking at. If I'm picking between the two though, I mean, God, like I like Dameon Pierce. I've been a fan of Dameon Pierce. I advocated him, you know, for him a lot in like the pre-draft process. And like, I still feel like he'll be a good investment, you know, next year. And like for dynasty people, you know, like assuming you didn't go bonkers to get him, like he'll be fine. But I think as I pointed out in our conversations, you know, just like off the air or whatever, like this is more carries than he has ever handled at any time in his playing career. Like at Florida, I think he capped out around like 120 carries or something. Like he hit that rookie wall pretty early, like a few weeks ago. So like, and we hear it a lot from, you know, younger players coming into like their second year, or like their third year or something. They're just like, yeah, one of the bigger adjustments I've had to make to the professional game is like, wow, like my body's going through a lot more. I have to prepare myself a little bit differently. We heard Najee Harris talk about that a lot this offseason and why he kind of like reworked, you know, his muscle structure and stuff to be able to hold up to that workload and the abuse better. Because of that, I would err more toward the player that's been in the league that understands that type of grind a little bit better. And also, frankly, like now the bar for this is beneath the mantle of the earth, but I would trust an offense run by Sam Darnold more than I trust an offense run by Kyle Allen. And I don't mean that in any sort of offensive way to Kyle Allen.
But so like, that to me is like the wild card in all this. They're both bad offenses.
They are.
And so it's like with Dameon Pierce, like you've got the past 2 weeks, he's totaled 15 rushing attempts for 8 yards a game. Like he's basically averaging like a yard per attempt, pretty close to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a total cliff. I mean, even if you look at some of the other like games he had, like the worst by far was versus Tennessee, where he had 2.3 yards per attempt.
Yeah.
Only 35 yards on 15 rushing attempts. The thing I like about Pierce is he does get passes, which Donta Foreman does not.
No.
But I think I, as someone who was looking at these guys as my RB2, because thankfully I have Austin Eckler, I think they're matchup dependent, to be honest. If you were someone who had both, I think if I had to pick one or the other, at this point, I'd have to, well, this week aside, because Donta Foreman's on bye, I think I would have to pick Foreman. I think partially because he has better matchups. I think that is one of the biggest differentiating factors. I get what you say about the rookie wall. I think there just are clearly, like, the rookie wall to me doesn't explain a change from 5.5 yards per attempt against the Giants in week 10 to 0.8 yards per attempt against the Commanders in week 11. Like, again, had it fallen to 2 yards per attempt, you have my attention. But 0.8 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
There has to be some level of bounce back for Pierce. But I think because Foreman has some genuinely good matchups, I got to lean his way. So here's the game I want to play with you. Week for week, which one are you picking? So let's start, obviously, week 13. We're picking Donta Foreman. Just kidding. We're picking Dameon Pierce. Not only does he have a great matchup against the Cleveland Browns, but he's guaranteed just about to have a better performance than Donta Foreman, who's on bye. Now, granted, Rondell Moore managers know that that guarantee does not always come to fruition. But I digress. So week 14, Dameon Pierce at the Dallas Cowboys. Donta Foreman at the Seattle Seahawks. Who are you taking?
That Dallas front can be got, but it's not a guarantee. I would feel better about taking the guy going up against Seattle.
I would agree. All right, week 15, Donta Foreman versus Pittsburgh, or Dameon Pierce versus Kansas City.
It depends on which version of the Steelers' run defense shows up. But now that Chiefs front, dude. I mean, like, there's a reason that they've schemed and built their defense the way that they do. I mean, like, yeah, you can throw on them because that's the only way that you kind of have to keep yourself in the game or whatever. But, like, God, that's a terrifying front.
But weirdly, so again, this isn't like over X amount of weeks. So I think the Chiefs' defense has gotten better in recent weeks.
Yeah,
which I think is worth mentioning. But season long, they're literally middle of the pack. They're the 16th toughest matchup for opposing fantasy running backs. Whereas the Steelers are the 17th toughest.
And, so that being true does kind of throw a wrench into it. And then kind of like I, alluded to, I've definitely talked about it on this show before. It's just like when they're all there and like not getting banged up or whatever and like leaving certain series early, like that Pittsburgh front, good luck. I mean, they're very old, true. Which is why it's, sometimes easy for them to, give up shit because Cam Hayward has to take a drive off because like, he, dinged his knee. He's going to get looked at by the doctors. And then it's like, oh, wow, he's out of the game. Cool. We gave up 70 yards on one drive. Great. Like those are possibilities, but like, toss up. I honestly can't decide.
Initially I was going to go with Dameon Pierce just because the KC matchup is that much better.
Yeah.
But I'm going Donta Foreman, and I will tell you why. We talked about how bad these offenses are. And here's the thing. Houston will almost certainly be a negative game script against Kansas City.
Yeah.
Carolina might not be against the Steelers. Do I think the Steelers ultimately win that game? Probably. If I had to bet money on one team or the other, I'd bet on them. They're certainly better coached, But Kenny Pickett is still learning things. He's been known to throw an interception or two. The defense, while it can perform well, can also perform poorly. And so I just think it's more likely that Carolina stays in that game. And if they stay in that game, I think they're going to continue to feed Donta Foreman the rock, who, again, since week 7, the worst he's seen was a kind of baffling 7 for 23 against the Bengals.
Yeah.
Even against the Baltimore Ravens in week 11, he still got double-digit carries. So I get the toss-up call. I think that's honestly accurate, but I'm going to make the choice that I'm going to go Donta Foreman.
Makes sense. It definitely makes sense. I'll just do a quick note. The Steelers defense, collectively, if you just look at their like the entirety of their total contracts, highest paid defense in the NFL. And these are the fucking results that we get.
That's actually I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. Like, oh, look, I'm calling you out, defensive coordinator Terrell Austin. I'm a little annoyed. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Terrell. That even is your real name. Who's name? Terrell. Apologies to all Terrells listening in right now.
We love you. It's just that one, you know.
All right, I think this one's a little easier. Week 16, Dameon Pierce at the Tennessee Titans, or Donta Foreman versus the Detroit Lions.
Okay, all right, moving on, because that Lions defense
not so great. Aiden Hutchinson showing some flashes, but otherwise not so great.
Yeah.
I would agree. Given home game, bad Lions team, bad Lions run defense, and Tennessee, while they can be got, they certainly weren't got by Dameon Pierce when he played them in week 8.
No, and I am big supporter of that.
Yeah.
Titans front. They got some scary pieces up there. So
it's almost as if they have a really good coach.
Hey.
All right, last one. Fantasy championship, if I am so lucky to make it. I've got the choice between Donta Foreman at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or Dameon Pierce hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Ooh. Damn.
And remember, whatever I pick, I have to live with that choice.
Shit.
There's a championship on the line.
Shit, man. Ugh. I mean, the Jags have been weirdly good.
The Jags have been weirdly good.
And then also
and while Tampa Bay has a pretty good run defense, again, per Fantasy Pros, they're the 30th toughest for opposing running backs through the season to date. On the other hand, Donta Foreman absolutely destroyed them in week 7, 15 rushes for 118 yards.
That's what's bugging me, is because it's there's a realistic especially because think about it. By this point in the future, we will have seen what became of the Buccaneers season. Depending on how this goes and how out of whack everything is from a chemistry standpoint, because as part of my responsibilities over at Clutch Points, I have to keep up with what a lot of the beat reporters are saying in terms of just certain quotes from players and but also echoing their own opinions. And one of the things that shows up frequently on this Twitter list that I follow is I get quite a few Buccaneers reports from when my shift occurs in the day. It's about the same time that a lot of news comes out of the Tampa Bay beat reporters and stuff. The faith that the reporters have in the coaching staff is not particularly high. And
it's not, actually.
It's
really not.
It's not. And then we've also seen how just weirdly temperamental Tom Brady himself has been this year. So if things do go awry for them, and the NFC South just further sinks down into the realm of, being a worse goat rodeo than it already is, that could be one of those it's genuinely anybody's game type situations. So that's kind of where I'm hedging it a little bit. If the Buccaneers implode, especially considering what we've seen them go through the last few weeks and shit, they could be had, dude. I would honestly rather just bet on the Buccaneers beating themselves out of being tough enough to stop Donta Foreman and the Panthers than I would on the Jaguars just being randomly pretty good. So it's a little weird, maybe going a little outside the box, but I've been following it. I'm not entirely confident they make it into the end of the year in one piece. The Panthers have a shot at this.
Yeah, so I get that. So it's really interesting. So both of these guys did well against their opponent in the previous matchup. It's a division game. So Dameon Pierce against Jacksonville, 26 for 99 and a touchdown, 3 receptions on 5 targets for 14 yards, and a 13-6 win for the Texans. Feels pretty good. Honestly, uncharacteristically good. Foreman, though, week 7, in a 21-3 win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 15 for 118, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 27 yards. Again, feels odd, but like both of these guys have already done well. I think ultimately, Dameon Pierce has the slightly better matchup.
I don't blame
Tampa's
you at all.
Run defense is a little tougher. I think they're more likely to have something to play for because Jacksonville won't, other than pride.
Mm-hmm.
And so gut right now, and hopefully I will have more information come week 17 that will make this a little easier. But my gut right now is I'm going to go with Dameon Pierce because it's also at home. And I think in Tampa week 17, like if it had been in Carolina, maybe that's a little different. But in Tampa week 17, Brady fighting for his playoff life. The team is a little healthier probably by that point than it has been for a lot of this season. I think I just don't want to bet on that. So I'm gonna play Dameon Pierce that week. And I'm gonna pray for every second of that Sunday.
Oh my gosh, yeah, but look, that's the world that you get into in fantasy football when it comes to rostering these types of players. Like not to suggest that this whole conversation should mean, hey, avoid volume running backs for the rest of time. Like, don't hear what we're not saying. Because like there's proven value in that. It's just it's a little tougher, and these are the kinds of conversations that you have to have if you build up too many of these types on your team. Now, you only having to deal with 2 of them, you've successfully balanced your roster. But let this be a warning.
I've successfully balanced it with 1 excellent running back in Austin Eckler, 2 handcuffs that aren't producing at all in A.J. Dillon and Kareem Hunt, and then these 2 guys who are basically the same but different, but also the same.
It's a good thing you have those wide receivers.
It really is.
It really is, and it's a good thing that you tuned in to another edition of The Lateral Show, a sideways look at fantasy football and the best fantasy football podcast without check marks of any kind. My name is Herms. You can follow me on Twitter at HermsNFL. That is where I tweet about fantasy football. And look, fantasy6pack.net/plans. All access pass. Oh, no. Oh, there it is.
It's back.
There it is. Yeah. So, yeah. DFS tools, award-winning rankings, access to the Discord community. You get a lot of stuff out of it. Okay. You do. There you go. Yeah. 100% big facts. And then, Herms NFL on Twitter. That's where you can. Oh, yeah. Use promo code Herms on Thrive Fantasy for a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100 if you like prop bets, because that's fun. And I can do that again in Maryland now, which is good. So thank you to the state legislature for making gambling make sense again. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, MAGA, make America gamble again.
We're
the taking it back.
Yeah,
taking it back, damn it.
It's our acronym.
Oh, man. Well, as always, on that note, it's your boy McLateral, a.k.a. McLateral FF. You can find me on Twitter at McLateral FF. You can also find me on Twitter at MacMcMillanATL, where is my main account at this point. Tweet about my day job. Over at Tom's Guy, I tweet about sports. Not tweeting about a lot of sports at the moment. A lot of stuff has kind of ended for me. Baseball's over.
Warriors are back.
Football's here. Warriors are back. It's been an okay season. Soccer's on a break. I'm not watching the World Cup. F1's ended. Tennis and golf are essentially over, and I don't even like those. I'm running out of things at this point. I'm started watching like old highlights of snooker. Daddy needs the sticks.
Jesus Christ.
No joke. Honestly, if you've ever watched highlights of like the best people ever playing like darts, billiards, or snooker, it is pretty wild. Because in games like that, you basically can like shut someone down. Like bowling takes too long because you have to do the 10 frames no matter what. Whereas like darts takes like a little less time because you can just like knock out every single one that you need and like just do a perfect. But then like the snooker and pool, you can basically make it so the other person never shoots.
That is true. Yeah. Especially shout out darts, because like as you know, like I used to play in like our local, like our local cities like dart league and stuff. Like, if you've never like played, definitely start playing darts, folks out there. But also like it's fun to watch the highlights, man. The people that are like really just nailing those trips all the time, that.
So if you're a degenerate like us and you need some sports fix in your life until we get some football on Thursday, check out YouTube, watch some sports highlights, enjoy. But I think that is it for me.
There you go.
The Fantasy Heat Check. Always check out the Fantasy Heat Check on Fantasy Six Pack every Saturday. Got another one dropping this week, so look forward to that.
There you go. There it is, folks. So until next time, this has been the Lateral Show. I already said the tagline, but the sideways, I got to get better at this.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Lateral Show. Fasten your seatbelts, because here we go.